name's Ethan Hallfield. I'm a professional fly fishing guide here with Stone Appalachian Anglers. In today's Guide Series Gear Review, I'm going to go over some of the tackle that we use on our smallmouth fly fishing trips. For starters, with the rod, for smallmouth, a lot of people think you can get away with using your conventional trout gear, your 5 weights and 6 weights. To me, the ideal rod for fly fishing for smallmouth is a 7 or an 8 weight. And it's mainly due to the size of the flies that we're throwing. As you can see over here, I got some laid out like this Drunken Disorderly, good old Clouser minnow. It's sort of stable of fly fishing for smallmouth. These are big flies. These are big hunks of meat we're throwing at these fish. A 5 weight will not cut it trying to throw these types of flies. So that's primarily why we're using it. It's also not fair to the fish to fight it on overly light tackle. You're going to tire that fish out way too much and its chances of survival will decrease. So get yourself a 7 or an 8 weight. This is a 10-foot 7 weight Remington Vise. If I had to recommend one rod for a beginner, this is it right here. It's got nice fast action. It turns over these big flies really well. That extra foot on the rod allows you to be able to get a nice long cast out to wherever the fish are. Because most of the time when you're fly fishing for smallmouth, you're fly fishing in relatively large waterways. Next is a reel. Good news about fly fishing for smallmouth is you don't really need necessarily a fancy reel. A keys for a reel with fly fishing for smallmouth, you obviously want one that's not going to fail you when you're out in the water, so get yourself a nice metal one. Large arbor that can hold a 7 or 8 weight line. Relatively good drag system, but most of the time with smallmouth, they're going to come to the boat, they're going to fight you at the boat. They're not going to run like a trout or a steelhead will. So as long as you got something that's relatively large arbor, decent drag system, and is made out of metal, you're good to go. You got a reel that'll last you for a long time. Now, there's a bunch of different lines out on the market, and I'm going to show you a system that I use that's relatively versatile, especially for beginners who don't want to necessarily buy 2 or 3 different types of lines. To match this rod here, what I've got is Rio Outbound Short 7 weight floating line. This is it's a cold water striper line actually, and I find it works very well around here where we're at around Asheville. A lot of our rivers are higher elevation smallmouth streams. Most of the rivers are relatively cool for most of the year. This line right here will serve you well if you live in like a area that has a lot of cool water smallmouth fisheries. It's got a nice thick belly on it. The weight forward section is around 38 feet if I remember right. It's able to turn over some of these big flies very well, and you can launch it out relatively easy in just 1 or 2 double hauls. Now, like I said earlier, this is a floating line. There are opportunities that you might be presented with where you need a sinking line or where a sinking line might be beneficial. What I found that works very well for me is pick yourself up. These are made by Rio, these 10-foot in-touch replacement tips. Now, you would normally use these for spay or skagit casting like you would be fishing for salmon or steelhead. This is a type 3 sink tip, which means it's going to sink to about 3 inches per second in the water column. These are 10-foot long sections. They attach to the loop-to-loop connection on your fly rod. You take off your leader, you attach it to the loop-to-loop connection, boom, you've got an immediate sink tip. If you don't want the sink tip anymore or you get done fishing with it, take it off and you're good to go. Lastly, with your leader build, we could spend a whole video talking about leader builds, but I'm going to try and keep it relatively simple. You want a leader that is going to be able to turn over relatively big wind-resistant flies well. For your line choice, I would recommend using Maxima for your leader builds. Maxima is a relatively stiff, hard mono. I would recommend using a 30-pound butt section and tapering it down all the way to around 1 or 2x tippet. This is Rio PowerFlex Plus. It's a very strong abrasion-resistant line. This is 2x. It's rated at 12-pound test. You shouldn't be breaking fish off with this stuff. It's also good working around rocks and logs, especially if you're using dredging flies like this. They're going to be bouncing up and down off the bottom. You want a line that's relatively abrasion-resistant. And this is what I generally use 90% of the time on my smallmouth trips. Again, when you're going out fishing for smallmouth, leave your 5 weights at home. Get yourself a good 7 or 8 weight rod and get out there and enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a holler here at Southern Appalachian Anglers. We're more than happy to help you out. Tie lines, everybody.